Police Minister Bheki Cele will meet Izinduna from Denver and Cleveland hostels today over the violence and looting of shops across Gauteng. Cele has condemned the violent attacks, describing them as acts of criminality that must be stopped. The violence and looting of shops belonging to foreign nationals started in Tshwane last week. It then spread to Johannesburg after 3 people died in a building in Jeppestown on Sunday. Yesterday, numerous shops were looted and vandalized in Malvern, Tembisa, Turfontein and the Joburg CBD. Some 100 people have reportedly been arrested for various offences, including public violence, theft and damage to property since Sunday. On the agenda, we talked to Lirandzu Themba, the spokesperson for the Ministry of Police. A very good morning to you, Lirandzu. What are the measures that are being put in place by the Police Ministry to stop the wanton acts of destruction and looting that we're now seeing spreading to more Gauteng areas?
The one thing that the minister was quite clear about when he conducted a walkabout at the Johannesburg and affected areas was that there needs to be a lasting solution, Desiree, to what is unfolding not only in Johannesburg, but as you've mentioned, in the capital city and other areas in Gauteng. What he's decided to do, however, today is meet with, as you've said, Izinduna from the hostels, the Cleveland as well as the Denver hostel. Now, this meeting is very important because what we've been able to establish is that the most of these perpetrators that are basically embarking on the looting spree as well as the damage to property and businesses, when they are being chased by police in an attempt to maybe catch them, they're basically running towards these very hostels. And the minister interacted with some of the hostel dwellers there and the communities there, who have really just expressed their dissatisfaction, saying that the reasons why they are embarking on these protests is because of what transpired in August, where we saw police having to, retreat after being stoned by foreign nationals in the CBD of Johannesburg. And of course, the minister being clear again, saying that this is absolutely no excuse. These are just pure acts of criminality. And he's decided that he's going to be meeting with Izinduna to try and map a way forward and also just listen to these communities exactly what the problem is and how we can really just restore normality to back on the streets.
How did you get to the conclusion that Izinduna are the correct people to talk to in this particular instance?
Well, Izinduna are the leaders of these communities. I've just explained to you about the information that we're getting on the ground. The Provincial Commissioner, General Mawela, just telling the minister yesterday that from what they are able to gather, and also, of course, the intelligence, is the fact that some of the looters are actually residents of people that are living in these hostels. So this is how we're able to deduce to the fact that these communities have to be engaged. And of course, how do you engage a community? You engage its leaders, and in this case, Izindunas are the leaders of these said communities.
Lirandzu, we're constantly talking about foreign-owned shops and their owners repeatedly being the main targets of these unacceptable acts of violence. But there's also local shop owners who've said their shops have been looted.
And that's the point, right, Desiree? What the minister is also very clear about is that these are nothing but acts of criminality and all its manifestations. The narrative that is being peddled around that it is only foreign nationals or foreign-owned shops that have been targeted simply isn't true, because what we're seeing is that the likes of stores like Pep stores and USafe stores, and me and you both know that these are not necessarily owned by foreign nationals. And these are also stores that have been targeted in the lootings and damage to properties, that transpired from Sunday and yesterday. But we're also seeing car dealerships. But also, in the same breath, we are seeing that shops that are being owned by foreign nationals are also targeted. So that is why we are very convinced and of the view that this is not an orchestrated event that is just targeting certain individuals, but is opportunistic people that are taking advantage of a situation that, by the way, was sparked by a lover's quarrel, which resulted in a flat being set alight. And that just transformed into what we're seeing now, and which really speaks to us and says that It is just people who are taking advantage of a situation, people who are really also just desperate, really, going into shops and taking what they can.
Is the police service looking at all into the narrative that this could be politically motivated?
Crime intelligence on the ground is really telling us about the fact that it is, sporadic lootings that are taking place at this moment. We are not convinced that there is some sort of third element to this at this point. There's no sign that is showing that this is the case. What we are seeing is that, and this is the information that has been given to General Bheki Cele, that it is sporadic events that are taking place. And of course, there are also instances of copycats, acts, which we are seeing just unfolding in other parts of the province. So at this point, we don't have any information to suggest that.
What kind of headway is being made in terms of the people who have already been arrested?
Well, we know that almost 100, if not over that, people have been arrested. Also, we've made considerable progress in the arrest of people that are also responsible for the torching of trucks in the KZN region. We know that there has also been a lot of conflict in that part of the country as well. So a lot of headway has been made, Desiree, with regards to trying to not only just quell the violence and the looting and the damage to property, but also to make sure that these people do account before a court of law. So obviously the criminal processes were going to have to take its course in that instance. But most of these suspects that have been nabbed have really been arrested for damage to property and of course theft and so forth. But it's obviously up to the criminal justice system to just take its course going forward.
Lirandzu, another question that keeps coming up is why police intelligence is not able to preempt these events.
That is a question I've been asked throughout the morning, actually, and I keep on repeating and saying that we are very confident as a police ministry that our crime intelligence is up to the task. It is effective and efficient. This is one of the reasons why what we are seeing unfolding could have been much worse, Desiree, if we did not have crime intelligence on the ground. Just going back to the truck situation in KZN, crime intelligence was and is, or the other officials that are informing the minister on a daily basis, telling him about what do they think is going to happen and what has happened. For example, we were aware of the sort of threats on these trucks in the KZN region, days before they could actually happen. And if crime intelligence wasn't as effective as I'm indicating, the situation could have been much worse. But it's very important to understand and contextualize what's happening here in the Johannesburg CBD. And what is happening here, it is not an orchestrated event as to what we're seeing in the KZN region. As I've mentioned, we're seeing opportunistic events taking place, people who are seeing other lootings and just joining in. So it's very difficult then for crime intelligence to really pick up on who is going to change their mind and leave their house to go and loot. But of course, there's always room for improvement, Desiree, as you know. But right now, the minister is being briefed thoroughly by crime intelligence, and he's confident that they're able to basically, give valid information, good information that could bring an end to this, but more than anything, really just stop more of such events happening.
Let's just to finalize our conversation, talk about the way forward. We know you're meeting with the Indunas, but what other activities are you going to roll out?
I'm sorry, I completely missed that question.
Just in terms of the way forward, what plans have you got in place?
Well, there's this meeting right now at 2 o'clock, this afternoon at 2 o'clock with the minister, as well as Izinduna. This is the first step that we are taking to try and bring some sort of finality and normality back on the streets. But we know that the police have been out in full force, not only just yesterday, but also throughout the night. Reporters will tell you that most of the areas that were adversely affected have really just died down this morning because of the increased police visibility. So the minister has welcomed the more deployment of police officers, but he's also indicated, Desiree, that there needs to be a lasting solution, calling for the Gauteng Premier David Makhura to basically try and meet with many of these affected communities just to find out what are the underlying issues, which we all know that there are also socio-economic issues that are also involved. And of course, the police alone cannot be the only people that are expected to bring normality to the situation, as much as our job is to obviously make sure that there's no lawlessness that's residing. At the same time, it is also up to departments like social development and so forth to really look into what are some of the problems that these communities are facing, and if they can be helped and not resort to such violent acts.
Lirandzu, it's that kind of situation that solicits so many questions. Even as I'm saying to you, this is our final questions, I'm thinking of about 10 other things to ask you. But thanks for making the time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.